Welcome to County Board Wrap-Up. I'm your host, Kara O'Donnell, and as we do every month, today we're going to take a closer look at the actions the County Board takes that affect you, your neighborhood, and your community. We're joined today, as always, by County Board Chair Jay Fisette, and joining him today is Board Member Libby Garvey. Thank you both for being with us today. And of course, let's start off. The topic everybody's been talking about is the budget. We have adopted a budget for the fiscal year 2018.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was a good process this year. We came to a consensus. We had a lot of compromise. We found, actually, we reduced the budget tax rate from what the manager proposed, and that took a lot of work to find some places we were willing to cut, things we didn't need at this point in time, and a lot of reallocations. The manager did some reallocations. We did some more. We took some advice from the Fiscal Affairs Advisory Commission. And in the end, I think this is a budget that balances what is important and needed in terms of those investments in our community and fiscally responsible. So I feel very good about it at this point, and it is a seasonal project. It's a three-month deal, so now we move on to a lot of other things in the community.
Now, the one thing residents have been concerned with is that there is that tax rate increase, but we did go from the 2 cents down to 1.5. Let's talk a little more about that, why that was so needed, and kind of the compromises that were made.
I think we're always trying to bring the tax rate down as much as we can. And here we had an increase because even if we don't increase the tax rate, people's taxes go up because the value of their property goes up almost every year. So it's, we just try to keep it down as much as we can. And one of the things, Jay covered a lot of what we did quite well. One of the other things that we did was to just delay. There were some programs that we delayed partially. So for example, streetlights, I think the manager proposed 7 positions at first because we really need to do a better job of repairing our streetlights. We were way behind on that. And we decided maybe we don't need all 7 right out of the box. We'll start out with, I think it was 5 is what we finally put in. 3. Was it 3? 5 and 3. So, we'll get to 7. But some of these programs, when they start out, they can't always start out full bore. And so I think that's a reasonable place to take some cuts. So but we funded Metro and we funded our schools.
I was just going to say, now that's really the big reason this increase was needed, is because of this extra funding needed for Metro, for schools.
100% of the $0.015 increase in the rate for real estate, 100% of that is going to cover school enrollment growth and the Metro subsidy that has dramatically increased for us. I mean, we put in $70 million a year plus to Metro capital and operating. That's a huge sum of money. And this year we saw a $7-8 million increase in our contribution. That is 1 penny on the tax rate. In fact, it's a little more. So we had to find other places within the existing funds to do it. That said, those are 2 hugely important things to the future of the county and the region. Our economy is based on it, the culture of our community with education. And the solution in the long run is finding a new dedicated funding source for Metro. Okay. We will not be able to, in the local governments in Virginia, meet those new demands, those new funding needs for Metro without a dedicated funding source. It's got to be done over the next year or so.
Because Virginia is a little bit different than the other jurisdictions that contribute to Metro.
Local,
correct?
Arlington, Fairfax, Alexandria, our citizens pay that $70 million a year, whereas in Maryland, it's covered by the state. Right. And that is a huge difference. The local folks don't have that burden to deal with in Maryland. And of course, DC is its own animal. It's a state and a local government all combined. So the burden here is on us, and we can't afford the long-term needs as they're presented for Metro.
And I just might mention the other catch-22 is our vacancy rate, which we don't talk, but that's intimately tied with our tax rate because our vacancy rate, what is it now? It's a little over 19%. Yeah, and every point, a percentage point, is like around 3.5 million on the tax revenue for that year. Every percentage point. So when we've got the way to get that vacancy rate and attract people and fill our buildings is we need to have good schools, we need to have good transportation. So they're all intertwined, and we cannot stop thriving as a community, because the best thing we could do is get that vacancy rate down.
Which we're working to do.
We
but
are.
It doesn't happen overnight.
No, it's a long, long slog.
Let's talk some of the specifics of the budget. Where, what are some of the highlights? Where can residents expect to see increases, decreases? What are some of the main points that we're...
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some of the specific things that we found we could support above and beyond what we did last year through reallocations. For example, we put 7 deputy sheriffs, but as Libby said, we didn't hire them all at the front end. This was the result of a study of the needs of the detention facility and the sheriff. We phased them in over the course of a year plus. We have the street light maintenance. Instead of 5, we're actually just going with 3 to see if that works. We're putting some more money into land acquisition. One-time money, it'll go in to support the land acquisition fund. A little more money into the affordable housing investment fund. 1 or 2 of our nonprofits that had extreme circumstances like Doorways, we were able to find some money to support that program.
And the League Highway Alliance coming on.
I'd say
Columbia Pike.
that's a really
Columbia
good one.
Pike.
The 2 big non-metro corridors in Arlington, Columbia Pike and Lee Highway, both did well in that we're giving more money to the Columbia Pike Revitalization Organization and some money to do some study and work there, one-time money for investments. And then on Lee Highway, we're funding the Lee Highway Alliance, a new partnership, and putting the money in to continue that corridor study, redevelopment study.
And this all helps then with helping to secure Arlington's bond rating as well. I know we're getting into those discussions for another year. How does this budget allocation help to make sure we maintain that good status with the bond rating?
Well, we don't have too much debt, and we have, we had a really wonderful work session on reserves, which I was not able to attend, and I am planning to look through and actually then talk through with staff, because I've heard rave reviews about it, in that we have reserves, and we're required to have these reserves by the rating agencies. And I think there's been a lot of sort of misunderstanding about what they are for and how they are used. They're all, they're there for specific purposes. And we need to have them to maintain that rating. And that's a really important part of what we do.
I'm just going to reinforce that because Libby did have to miss that one, but it was a very important and piece of information for the community and for the board. You don't get to 0 at the end of every year. We balance our budget, but that doesn't mean our reserves are supposed to be spent. Our rating agencies that give us our rating, that allow us to borrow money at the lowest possible rate on the planet, they require us to have at least 5%, some jurisdictions 7 and 10% of their operating fund just sitting there, really never touched unless you have a dramatic need. And those reserves and those other funds are designated or required not to be spent down. And a lot of people don't understand that. That's part of the education that will have to happen to.
Now, with the challenges with Metro and school funding, is there any danger of having to dip into those reserves and that would affect that bond rating?
Most of those reserves have very strict criteria on which you can use the reserves and tap in, and it's only for a cataclysmic reason that you go. Now others, the transportation fund is set up, can only be used for transportation. The stormwater management fund, only for stormwater. So each fund has its own distinct identity and the criteria upon which you can use it, but the reserve funds that the bond rating agencies look for, really you don't touch. If you touch them, you're in trouble.
And just kind of transitioning, we were talking about the need for more funding for schools. On that note, the board has approved to build a new elementary school to start dealing with some of those issues. Let's talk a little bit about TJ.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful school. And I think I was sitting, I sit next to Kate Crystal, and she sort of leaned, this is a beautiful project. It really is. In part because right now it's a big, ugly parking lot, and what the schools are going to be doing is much of that's going to be a school to the back, but that parking lot is going to be a field, and parking will be underneath. And I think that's something you're going to see a lot, which you already are seeing a lot more of. It's how we say we got 26 square miles and you can't make any more land. Well, yes, you can. If you put a parking lot underground, a field on top, there you go. So that's, and I think it's going to be a real improvement for that site.
What's the time frame for that new school?
I think it's coming online in 19.
I think so.
2019, and it really, the schools have a 10-year CIP. That 10-year CIP and the schools that are intended to come online, or the additions over those 10 years, are designed to meet the projected school growth in the 10-year period. And this is one of the needs in the southern part of the county is for an elementary school. And it is. In the end, through the process that we had, I think everyone realizes it was a successful process by the time we got to yes. The building is gorgeous. And
Net zero, right?
It's got a high energy efficiency. They're investing in that, which is a really good thing, just like the Discovery School in another part of the county. And in the end, it's very consistent with the principles of the community facility study, which said our greatest challenge is land. So we got to build up, we got to go under, we got to go over, we got to find new ways of being more efficient with the limited resource that we have.
And with those limited resources, of course, during the construction process, we're going to have some challenges with regards to parking over there at TJ for that parking lot. Right. I was over there last weekend for a show, and I was thinking that parking lot where I parked my car is.
And our staff is working really closely with the schools, and I think we're going to be able to find a home. Although it's always hard. If somebody's used to always going to the same place for 5, 10, 15 years to see a performance, it can be, you often lose, disorienting, and you can lose folks that way. But they're really working hard. The theater's okay, so you still go to the theater. So for example, for I think it's Opera Nova, they come in and they bring buses, often bring people with buses, so that parking's not an issue. But for people where everybody's cut for performances where they're, everybody comes driving, that's not going to work very well. So.
And the big one there is they're a couple, but the Arlington players have been there for a long time. They get a great turnout. It's likely that the larger groups are going to be relocated for a couple years during construction, and they are working that out right now. In the next week or so, I think the new schedules, the new locations, which hopefully will be one site for them for that entire period, so there's the minimum amount of disruption to their audiences. That'll work out. But this is really where the schools in the county have to work even closer together, because we built a lot of beautiful theaters in our high schools and our middle schools, and these places, these schools are no longer just schools. They actually, all of them have a lot of community use too, and theaters are probably going to be increased.
All right, well, we're going to take a short break now, but when we come back, we'll take a look at the actions the board took to improve some popular Arlington parks, in one case with some help from friends. Welcome back to County Board Wrap-Up, where we take a closer look each month at some of the board's important decisions. We're here today, as always, with County Board Chair Jay Fisette, as well as Board Member Libby Garvey. Thank you both once again. This was a very important meeting for the outdoors in many, many different respects. But let's start first with some of the improvements we're going to be making to some of Arlington's parks and sports fields.
Sure. Well, 2 parks, and this is part of our ongoing work to maintain and refresh parks. There's so many gorgeous little neighborhood parks throughout the county, and they are used very heavily, very accessible to almost every neighborhood. So we go through, we refresh, we actually engage the community in what kinds of park and playground equipment you want and how it can be designed. The kids then actually have a role in picking out some of the equipment. So there were a couple of parks, I think it was Tyrol Hills and Oak Grove, that both got a refresh and some new playground equipment. So good news for those neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
And Gunston Field got a new field, artificial turf, which was a bit of we had some discussion about that. And actually, I think it's the first time it's a public-private partnership, I guess you would call it, with the Arlington Sports Foundation. And they came, John Fody first came and talked to Jay and I about, I think it was 3 years ago. Yeah, wondering could we do if we raise some money, would you use it to do artificial fields? There was concern about what's inside the field. We use crumb rubber. We use crumb rubber that's not reused. I think they call it virgin rubber. And there have been some articles about maybe this is a concern, maybe we should be using something natural. And Dr. Ruben Verghese was there and really addressed those concerns quite a bit. And there have been a lot of studies, and nothing is 100%. But we decided that the crumb rubber was the way to go and did not pose a danger. And actually, grass fields themselves, when they get really hard and compact, can be a problem. So it was really exciting. I think it was a win-win. And I just really love the model we have now of the Sports Foundation helping us do these fields, because it really expands the use of the fields. You can, that night, in fact, I think the speaker said, it's raining tonight, all the grass fields are closed, and the artificial ones are open. If it's not raining hard, but if it's been raining, you can't play on those grass fields.
Do we expect to maybe see down the line more types of public-private partnerships with these groups who have such a vested interest in the parks?
I would think so.
And we've had some already. George Mason University partnered with us to build the baseball diamond, a 4-mile run. Marymount built one of the fields at Longbridge Park. Now we have the Arlington Sports Foundation, just local citizens, volunteers that decided that for their kids they wanted to make an investment for the future. And it really does get down to, back to the community facility study, if you got limited land and you can't just go build more, how do you create in the same space something that can be used twice as often? Because it's not required to be shut down when it rains. I mean, a lot of those grass fields, 40% of the time they're unusable.
Right.
And it requires more cost to maintain them. So once you build in the stormwater management with an artificial surface, and you continue to refresh and follow the news and the science about the materials you're using to make sure they're as safe as possible, it is the best way to go. I think you'll see more alternate surface fields in the county as the population and the number of kids grow.
Another thing we had was notable trees, continuing our outdoor theme.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about this program. What's really the goal behind it?
I think I'd say that people bring it up with us all the time. Why can't you save the trees? The trees are so important to the character of the community, the environment, everything else. And we always say we are so limited in what we can do. We can't tell somebody what they must do with a tree on private property. So within state law and the restrictions on us, we've come up with as many ways as we can to incentivize people to keep beautiful trees. So we acknowledge them, we recognize them, we call them notable trees, we publicize them, and we bring certain pressure to bear, both to protect from a development in the future or to nourish what's there. And these trees are a great asset. Our tree canopy is about 43%, and a few years ago it's now down to about 40%. And every time we have a chance, we try to invest in the tree canopy to enhance the quality of life in Arlington.
Right. And make people realize how important they are. And giving awards is a good way to do that. So you give an award to a tree, which is kind of cool. And then today, earlier today was at Nottingham School where we had an Arbor Day presentation. I'm wearing my Arbor Day pin. We planted a pin oak. And actually, we won an award. I think it's the 15th or 16th award. We just keep winning this award as tree-friendly communities. And one of the things the speaker said, Jim McClone from the Virginia Department of Forestry, that this is the one ceremony and holiday that looks to the future rather than commemorating something in the past. And I really like that. He talked about how much he enjoys coming to schools and how appropriate it is to work with children in schools when we're having these ceremonies. It's really great.
And then moving from outstanding trees to outstanding volunteers, also dealing with the outdoors, we had the Bill Thomas Awards with our outstanding parks volunteers honored. Now, tell me a little, why is it important to really get out there and honor some of the folks who are doing this kind of volunteer work?
Well, I think that's what, when you build community, you don't want to take people for granted, right? And people, incredible hours. So we had Paul Holland and Yu Sin Soo. And I kind of really enjoyed, I think many of us know Paul. Yu Sin Soo, I may not be pronouncing your name quite right, is not as well known, but so typical. They told her story, which was she saw this patch of garden that had been nice once and wasn't being taken care of, and she just took it upon herself to fix it up. Went and got worked, and she, single-handedly basically brought back
Right
this
outside
garden.
the county library.
Yeah. So it's something for everybody, and you have to say thank you to people for doing this and recognizing it. And most people don't do it for the recognition, but it's really important. And I think it encourages other people. If you didn't celebrate volunteers, people might not realize how much volunteers do, and it might not occur to them to volunteer. But a community does much better with volunteers. It helps the whole community, and actually all of the research shows that volunteers themselves are helped. It helps your mental state, it helps your health, it helps all kinds of things. It's just a win-win-win.
Very inspirational.
Yeah.
And then finally, kind of a bit of an outdoors and bringing some of the farm to table idea. We're bringing a new farmers market to Arlington.
I think it's number 9, if I understand right. This is in Roslyn. So right in the center of Roslyn, in that new Central Place Plaza, will be a farmers market starting sometime this May. And it is a good thing because the more you can use local food, you're helping the local economy. It's fresh. And it's also a community building place, a place-making exercise. So number 9 in Arlington, and hope it works really well.
So pretty much every day, somewhere in Arlington, you
There's a
can
farmer's
experience
market.
farmers market.
Sure.
All right, great. We're going to take another quick break now, and then when we come back, we're going to get an update on another park, Longbridge Park. Stay with us. Welcome back to County Board Wrap-Up, where we take a closer look each month at some of the board's important decisions. Our final segment isn't about a decision that was made at this month's meeting, but the board did get a much-anticipated update on Phase 2 at Longbridge Park. Jay, Libby, thank you once again for being here. Now, it seems like Longbridge Park has kind of been in a holding pattern, so to say, for quite some time, but the manager came forth with an update this month. What can you tell me?
Yeah, he really has been following through on direction from the county board from last year. We had a work session. We had a new approach to procurement, how to move forward within the existing budget. And really what this is to build the facility that was always envisioned in the master plan for Longbridge Park. This is the area, for those that don't know it, just north of Crystal City, sort of to the side of 395 and GW Parkway. So if you go to the existing park, you see those wonderful big playing fields and soccer fields. You see playground, you see the wetlands and the esplanade, and this is the completion essentially. So the next phase is both the facility and the completion of the last 10 acres, continuing that esplanade all the way to the north as well. So it's a bunch of stuff. They have essentially created or adopted a new procurement method, which is design build. So it'll be going out in about a week or so, early May, to identify people that want to participate in a design competition, to design and meet, these certain objectives and these elements and features.
And residents are going to get to weigh in.
Absolutely, they have already for a long time, and then they will as the design proceeds. And this is, again, working within the existing budget to bring this to sort of a contract for construction before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Now, finances have always been a sticking point, especially for the Aquatics and Fitness Center. Are we confident now with some of these scaled-back plans that we're going to be able to stay within budget?
That's the way design build works.
Good.
That's the point.
Yeah. So what happens traditionally, and I think we're all moving sort of away from that. Traditionally, you get design, you get something you really like, and then you go out and get somebody to build it, and you think you know what it's going to cost. But it comes back, and that's what happened with the pool. And one of the things we did, I think it was originally 3 pools, and now it's down to 1. We're going to join two. Yeah. Yes, the therapy pool and the teaching pool are going to be the same one. But it makes it much, basically when we go out and they sign a contract, they say, yes, we will build it for this amount of money. But they're willing to do that because they've designed it.
And they know exactly.
And they know
what's gonna
exactly.
cost
So there's a lot, the risk is really on the builder and on the private sector. And that, as somebody in charge of the taxpayer funds, makes me a lot more comfortable.
Yeah. It also gives the architects and the designers some freedom and flexibility to meet all the goals you have of different elements and features within whatever the creative or more efficient way of designing it could be. So they're working within a set budget. So there's no opportunity for them to come in and say, and when it gets bid on, the design you've already created to be way above that. So I think we're all pretty excited. We know there are wait lists at our current facilities, and this is a part of the county really underserved for these needs.
And just as a little bit of background, this was an old brownfield site, correct? So it's really a great example of
Creating land again.
Creating land again, and just a reuse of an industrial site from before. And for those who don't know, it's also the very best place to watch the 4th of July fireworks on the mall.
But not to be forgotten, that is a great point. This is land we got for free by shifting the density that was available on it to the other end of Crystal City, which is now being built as Potomac Yard. But as a result, we got 26, 30 acres of land, which
is a lot
where
of
do you
land for
find that
Arlington.
kind of land in Arlington? And we dedicated it to park.
Yeah, we had to fix it up a little bit because it was a brownfield,
and
but that's
we got awards and recognitions for turning a brownfield into a usable recreational facility. So very exciting all the way around, and it's exciting to see that the next phase of it being moving forward.
Yeah.
And what is the timeline here with phase 2 and getting to the?
Oh, I am trying to remember.
I think it's by the end of the year to finish the design,
Okay.
and develop the, pick the contractor to build it. And then probably 3 years to build from then. So we're talking about 2020, 2021.
I think that's right. And the bottom line is we really don't quite know yet because we got to get the design, we got to work for it. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, that brings us to the end of another county board wrap-up. We hope today's conversation with the county board members has given you some insight into some of the important decisions being made that affect you, your family, your neighborhood, and your county. To learn how you can get involved or make yourself heard on the issues, visit topics.arlingtonva.us/engage on the county website. That's our civic engagement webpage, and that's where you can share your ideas and learn how to get involved in the county issues that matter most to you. We'll see you next month.